Welcome to the Emanations of Light podcast hosted by Audrey. Welcome to the sacred space of conversation, inspired wisdom, and messages on how to access higher consciousness and levels of awareness and our divine nature. Our podcast is all things spiritual, from celestial and cosmic guidance through storytelling, poetry, wisdom teachings, inspired messages, and emanations of love for the new earth angelic and new earth consciousness. I welcome you to our podcast.
And welcome to the Emanations of Light podcast. I'm so glad to be here and showcase lots of beautiful and amazing speakers and guests on the show, just sharing our light, our inspirations, and just having organic spiritual conversations. So I wanted to start my first podcast with a lifelong friend of mine that we go way back, over 20 years, I'd have to admit. So Phil Gabbard with Fat Unicorn, and he is our editor. And he's been editing my podcast for some of my other podcasts that I co-host with, which we'll pick up again. But so I only thought it would be fair to have part of the team member as one of our guest speakers today. So welcome, Philip.
Thank you. We'll take it easy on you. We'll make it easy on us both.
We'll make it easy, right? So Philip and I, like I said, go way back since we were in the corporate world. And then, life happens and we got disconnected. And interesting enough, and I love how this synchronicity works in our spiritual world, is that we were able to reconnect. But when we reconnected as spiritual buddies and friends on such a deeper level. And now, I mean, he's just part of my family. He's part of my beautiful spiritual family. And I just love how that works out sometimes, is that you just never know the people that are in your life who are going to be the ones that are with you, walking alongside of you as we all maneuver through our own ascension journey and our own, we close chapters, we evolve, we change. And you never know who's going to be there right with you. And if back then someone would have told me that Philip was going to be there with me, I would be like, what?
Especially how we started.
Exactly. So I wanted to actually kind of touch on that note. And I'm going to go ahead and let you tell this beautiful divine story, because it's just fascinating. And it's just amazing, and I just love it. So,
I found out about the story from you, but I could totally see how it made sense. We worked for the same organization in different channels, and I came in as I don't know, probably full of myself, kind of, why isn't Audrey's team getting the job done? And I lived in El Paso, Texas. Audrey lived in Dallas. And the first thing I knew is that after I said something scandalous about her division, she was on an airplane sitting in our office. And who in the hell is this Phil guy? And how, who does he think he is? And so I didn't, start off on the best footing with you, but you quickly invited me to Dallas, and we spent days, months, ended up even years working together in our endeavors back then, and found a great friendship. And we got our feathers ruffled, and we smoothed them out. And we said, look, business-wise, we were a good match. We were a good match, and I think even after the slow start, we did become fast friends.
Yes, we sure did. And just a little backstory. So Philip and I were both in radio, in television, but mostly radio. I worked for a radio rep firm on the national scale, and Philip worked for the radio stations. And so, I mean, talking about, we were full blown in our full ego mask, holding these, titles, and heaven forbid anyone. And then, of course, as a divine feminine in a male-dominated corporate, I had to be on guard, right? I had to kind of like,
protect
had
that territory.
totally. So I was always on guard, and the egos flared, and but like you said, it was just a beautiful little phase that we had to kind of go through, and then our souls met
Years later.
Basically. Even back then, I think our souls kind of just intertwined with one another, and and then we just became, like you said, good friends. And then then like I said, life happens. I left the corporate world, I got married, I traveled the world, and then I had my full-blown awakening. And then I really don't remember how we reconnected, but when we did, it was profound.
I wrote a book.
That's right.
And this was, I want to say 2018, 2019. And I reached out to my community for support and helping me publish a book. And even though you and I had touched base a few times over the years, as people kind of drift apart, I really hadn't talked to you after, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years. But I knew you had a loss in your life, and I just don't think I was a good friend to you. I think spiritually we knew we were on the same page, and you called me, and you said, I distinctly remember exactly what you said to me, that that nothing had made you jump out of bed for a while until you found out that I was writing. And you were very excited about it. And that touched my heart. I remember telling my wife, I was like, how we reconnected. And my wife told me, that's the reason why you wrote the book, just to touch one person's heart. And if it was just, for us to reconnect, then all that effort was worth it. And I think from there, that's when our conversations about our spiritual journey, our spiritual challenges, the good things and the bad things, as we, started to awaken into our new selves, started happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's been the beautiful, deep reverence and connection that we've, been able to really establish, is that there's been times where, Philip has held space, space for me, as well as there's been times where, I hold space for him, and it's really without judgment, and it's completely egoless, which is completely, the opposite of the way we kind of started.
And Audrey, I think it's like, there was so many times, like, I know your path is your path, my path is my path. There's things, and I'll just say it to the audience. It's like, there's times that awakening just keeps, like, sometimes it's like this, like we nod off a little bit, and then that somebody shakes you a little bit and go, no, I'm awake. I'm back. I still am in the business, not in the media, but well, I guess I am in the media business. I'm still in that business. I've got a job to do, and then life happens, and then I go, holy fuck. I've called you. I've had several tragedies in my life, and you're always the first person I call. My brother passed away. I am racing down the road like a maniac to drive 4 hours to be there. And I'm talking to you on the phone going, who am I? Who am I right now? And you show up, and I'm like, I distinctly remember your voice in all of those conversations that I've had, time after time. Just to backtrack, even further, my brother's child passed away, and I called you and like, who am I for? And you were holding space and for me, and you just told me, who am I? I'm space. I'm the patience. I'm all that surrounds him in his time of need. I didn't need the answers. I didn't need, to provide anything but, this thing that I really, you said space. I'm like, what the hell's space? Like, how do you hold it? And you show up. I showed up with a calmness and a confidence about me of I'm here, and my presence was felt to him in his time of need.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the beauty about when you start to embody these higher, consciousness templates, whatever you want to call them, right? Holding space really just means that you're just present for another, and we're not trying to fix them. We're not trying to provide answers for them. We're not trying to do anything other than just be there in love with our hearts, be available to someone, to listen to someone. And we've, our culture is just so separated from just listening to another without trying to interject our own projections or woundings, or or we think we know what we want to know, but sometimes people just want to be held, and they just want to know that someone can hold them, and that's what holding space is. And
well, I think
actually one of the reasons that
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I just wanted to say that this is the reason why I wanted to create this podcast, so we can also, not only talk about our spiritual journeys, but also educate people on, some of this terminology and what that means, like, in our lives, because there's so much terminology. There's so many other platforms out there that talk about the spiritual aspects of who we are. And I think sometimes we don't really know what that means in our own world and what that looks like. So this is the reason why I'm, I just felt the need that this is what we really kind of need, is kind of like, just examples. We're all human. Doesn't mean we're having this human experience, I should say. So back that up. But we're spiritual beings, but we're still human, and we are still learning, and we're all learning how to be with one another as we evolve in our spiritual journeys. Yeah. So,
and I think those are things that I, looking, from where I'm at now, I don't know. I've been friends with you so long, and I think we can present ourselves. We're, come from two normal backgrounds, two normal, just American people that are out trying to hustle and make a living, and, not choke people. But then there's something else that calls us, or, like that, you have a, I'm wearing this, man suit, and I am wondering why I'm tuning into some things that I didn't expect, and I try to explain this to people, like, because I've advocated for a lot of my friends to contact you and have a conversation with you. And I'm always like, well, what does she do, and what is that about? And like, is all this woo woo and hoo hoo stuff? And I'm like, the fuck if I know what it's all about. All I know is that I have conversations with her and I feel better. And I've gone through a lot of things, personal loss and huge successes and all of these things, like any normal person goes through. Yep. And sometimes, yeah. And
as Philip knows, I have gone through a lot of those initiations as well.
But in your case, I know you went inside, and I don't, I'm pretty certain you kind of just closed up for a little while, and I remember, like, I was inside, and, it's very typical for men and younger men to, like, swallow some shit down and pack it away and, act cool, and like, that didn't hurt, that doesn't bother me. And then, but I also, I just also felt something else.
Bypassing is what we call it.
Right. Okay. And, but there was just something else I felt. And so I leaned into it. I leaned into conversations and with you, and, without judgment or an attachment to outcome. Like, I didn't come to you and go, fix my shit, it's all broken. Even though it probably was. it was healing, and there wasn't like a prescription for it. I didn't need it. I didn't need some medicine. I needed some therapy. I needed a conversation, but I felt at a huge level of deep connection and trust with you. It's not anything else but a conversation, but it's one that's held in with a regard of love, honesty. And from that, for those of, in the audience that are, kind of have sensory perception capabilities, or, strong feelings that you haven't really been able to unpack, or, figure out why you're holding these. I contend there's a reason. I don't know that reason, but it's worthy of finding a space to where you feel like you can share and kind of start a communication about what's up, and see where it takes you, because my relationship with you and the conversations we have that we've had have changed me profoundly.
That's just beautiful. And I mean, it just warms my heart. And I'm going to try not to cry on this podcast episode.
I want you to cry.
It's so touching. Because you know what? It makes everything, everything that all my initiations, that I left the corporate world, and everyone still thinks I'm crazy, and I still get projected on, get a real job, and, and I'm like, or work, because they don't see as what I do as work, but actually I think I work harder because I have to go through a lot of, my own inner fears and challenges and my own limitations. And it's what we're really doing is we're making unconscious programming, wounding, conscious. And when you start to make those things conscious, then we know how to address them. So in our conversations, that's what we're assisting, and that's what holding space is for another, because in actuality, healing is really self-healing. It's like, we're just facilitators. We're not necessarily healers. When the soul's ready to heal a part of a fracture, a wound, whether it's an inner child wound, trauma, fears, whatever it is, that we have to acknowledge that we have those. And then the soul goes through this evolution of unlocking what that is. And then it unfolds just like you have been able to. So it's, so for me, the reason that I'm able to hold space is because I've gone through a lot of those layers of removing the ego, removing some of those layers of fear, and just holding more love.
Yeah.
So healing is really just unconditional love. There's no judgment. There's no, what we call separation consciousness. We're embodying more of our divine aspects into our physical body right down here. And then we become more spiritualized. And that takes, we say ascension is not easy, and it's not easy to say that, oh yes, anyone can do that, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of dedication, and we have to remove lots of layers and lots of trauma, but we got to be really honest with ourselves that we carry it in the first place, and then dive deep into the, our shadows and that wounding to remove those layers. And then we start to embody higher consciousness, and we are able to see things from a higher perspective in a different lens. And so that's the evolvement. That's the ascension ladder. And of course, I've had lots of mentorships with my divine mentor, Stellar, and she's been able to help me uncover a lot of my wounding. And like I said, but my journey has not been easy at all. And, and I'm still going through lots of deep layers.
I was going to say, and it still unfolds.
And it still unfolds.
There's not
the difference is, though, Philip, and I was writing the other day, is that it just makes it easier to maneuver because you're able to see it for what it is and you acknowledge it. And then I'm more in my heart, and I'm more in the divine surrender of my challenges versus the resisting, right? So when we start to resist some of the challenges, or we blame another or victim of circumstances, and that's where it's really, really difficult. And again,
I, th-
I've
I,
been there.
I think I'm there at the point, you and I are, kindred in our hearts and so forth. Your journey, I mentioned before, is separate. I've learned some things from you and from my own out in the real world too experiences. That ascension is, they call it a journey, but a lot of times we associate journeys with going somewhere, like, oh, we're going to New York. Let's enjoy the journey to New York. And at one point along that journey, we expect to arrive in fucking New York City, right?
Yeah.
And this is more like
an inner dark journey.
Yeah, like the Sunday drive.
Into
Where are
the
we going?
unconscious.
Yeah, where are we going on our Sunday drive? I don't know. We're just going somewhere.
You're going
there's a something like we all ascend, but it just in different ways, in different places, and different paces.
Yeah.
And I've had other therapies. I've had other experiences. I had a heaven experience that was profound, and you again were the first person I called, like, listen to this one. And but it was almost like, these little chunks that are that somehow I created a gravity that allowed things to be drawn to me, experiences. I was thumbing through some Stoic philosophy, just kind of reminding myself of Marcus Aurelius, and and there was just some profound things that I realized, like, from my experiences, like, there's some people along our historical path that, man, these guys knew some shit.
Yeah.
The same things that I feel, and that there was an awareness and an awakeness in so many historical things that we can still access today. But a lot of us, who I was before all of this, 20 years ago maybe, I was not open to receive.
Yeah.
I've been going down a path projected by what society said we should do,
Yep.
Go to school, get a job, get married, have kids,
Yep.
be productive citizen, pay your taxes, and move on.
Yep.
And then we get to the somewhat, halfway point, and you go, this ain't working. Great. I feel like shit. I make tons of money,
But we're trapped. And
No
you
shit.
and I have felt that, because
then you go through hard things. Your tragic loss and my tragedies and setbacks and everything else,
and no amount of money can soothe that amount of pain that that we've endured, and through our initiations,
the world.
the loss
I was
of my
going to say,
husband.
rub some dirt on it and walk it off. It just doesn't wash. And so these type of conversations, and I'm grateful for your friendship, and I'm grateful for who you are as a to be able to hold in your heart and this capability of this divine love that you can give to not only me, but to all of your lovely people that you get to work with and help assist them on along their ascension.
Yeah.
It's just really cool, and that's what I advocate for. I advocate for you because
Thank you.
It just works. It just helps. There's sometimes it's we're conditioned to believe in transactions, right? I'm going to go to get some therapy, and well, what's wrong with you? Well, I've don't feel good up here when this happens. And so you feel like this is a transaction. I've paid you money. Where's my shit? You know? And
my Insta fix.
yeah, you see how that is like, but if you go into something, I practiced with a shaman in Juarez, Mexico, you know? And I think the best mindset that I've had was to go into it having no attachment to outcome. Why do you do it? I don't know. I just trust that what I'm supposed to get out of it, I will get out of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, for a while, my wife and I would do it together. And sometimes she goes, you know, I just don't know what I get, you know? I said, that's okay. Just, we'll keep going. Well, let's keep, you know, and it takes a little while, but having this openness to receive is a pretty big aha for a lot of us. And even when you do receive, and I received a huge, you know, experience from all of this, a life-changing experience from all of this, the transaction's still not complete.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, oh, now I got it and I don't need this ever again and I'm fixed. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you know, the beautiful thing and the misconception about energy healing or going, you know, spiritual healing, that it's so subtle, but so profound. And unless you're tapped into the subtleness of who we are as multidimensional beings, you know, you're kind of left not knowing how that shifted and changed you. Because I've had so many people, you know, have sessions, you know, newbies. I love my newbies, right? And so I tend to gravitate to the newbie, and they come in and, let's just example, they came in because they were feeling anxious about something or whatever. And then, you know, after our session, a couple of days go by and, you know, they no longer feel that, but they never really attributed to the energy healing. They just like, it's just because
God, I got lucky.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like they're back to normal. Life is fantastic. It's amazing, right?
It's totally, and that's normal. I mean, I know you know your business, but you know, you're still dealing with a human, you know.
Totally.
And
but but it's amazing. But the reason is because, as you know, no one has ever been taught that we're these spiritual beings with so many different senses. And even though we might not be able to perceive who we are on a grander scale, or even the energies around us, it doesn't mean it does not exist. And profound shifts and changes are happening within us.
Yeah.
But it just takes a conscious mind and an open, like you were saying, receptivity and open heart for this transition, or the transformation, for the healing, or even to feel connected, because that's all it takes, because it takes us wanting to feel this connection to our spirit, our soul, to the divine, to who we are as spiritual beings, besides this linear world. It's like so many people are on autopilot, unfortunately, thinking if they're in this horrendous job, that they have to stay there, and they gotta keep going every single day, because then how the bill's gonna get paid. And trust me, it's not easy to say I'm gonna jump all in and say I don't have a net, and I completely trust in my higher self. I trust in the divine, and I know that everything is going to be okay. Trust me, that's not an easy maneuver. But if it's your soul is dying, then you're still miserable. You're still, not where you're supposed to be. Then isn't it worth kind of exploring, making some of those changes, and asking, for that divine guidance, and asking what is it that I'm supposed to be doing. And unfortunately, we all ascend and wake through these catalytic moments, right? And it usually involves some form of trauma, pain, or something, right? And that's how I started my own journey is through physical pain. You know, my body was starting to shut down because I wasn't hearing my soul. And then, you know, next thing you know, I'm, you know, completely, you know, down and I can't walk. You know, I got this really horrible bout of sciatica and I was literally crippled. And every chiropractor I would go to, they kept telling me I was going to need surgery. And I just knew in my mind, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to have surgery. And then all of a sudden, all it took was someone to say the word Reiki. And actually, it was my brother. I was having a conversation with him. And I remember this so clearly. And he said that his wife had gone to a Reiki practitioner. And it was like, that's what I'm supposed to do. And then I sought out a Reiki practitioner. And then I went to go see them. And for me, it was a flip of the switch, Philip. And I knew at that moment, not that it was going to remove my pain, but that's what I was supposed to be doing.
That's the path.
And that's when everything shifted and changed. And then I took the same tenacity, the same, you know, courage that I had, you know, used in my corporate world. And I pursued a career and as a Reiki therapist, right? And that's how I started my journey. But it, again, remember, my body was shutting down. I was crippled. I couldn't walk, you know, and that's, you know, so unfortunately, sometimes some of these moments, if we're not able to change, you know, life does change for us, you know, or it changes our circumstances because our soul is more intelligent. The divine is more intelligent than the human ego mind.
I had heard it explained years ago, and I guess I was in my 30s. I went to a program called Landmark, and it was, you know, and it was awesome. You know, it was internal discoveries and stuff like that. And I again, without consideration, without looking it up and what am I going to get out of this? I for whatever reason, I just went into it. But I remember in a conversation, like we're born perfect. And then the things that, you know, we're, if when we're born, we're just this little circle of, you know, possibility. That, you know, from the moment that we're spanked and start breathing and that we realize that there's things that are not possible, you know, and how they explain it, it's like, you know, you're born like this, but you learn that you can't, you know, scream, you know, and run naked down the grocery store, you know, and like, you know, you're gonna get a spank for that, you know. And so all of a sudden, you know, part of this circle is cut out. Like, okay, so that's not possible.
Yeah,
and
conditioning, right?
Yeah, and then you have to raise your hand before you speak, and you can be disciplined if you do that wrong, or you have to wait in line, or you know, speak when you're, you know, spoken to, and all of these things, and you can't do that, and you have to do this, and this is how this works, and all of a sudden this entire sphere of possibility gets, you know, kind of constricted into where you go, okay, here's that little dot of possibility left. That's where we can live. This is where we operate, and it's, you know, you try to make sure you have enough room to could be yourself, but you typically can only be yourself either in your own house or even just in your shower. That's where you feel like I can sing, you know, or whatever, you know, like really be myself. And you know, when you wake up to the fact that fuck, I'm performing, I'm behaving in the ways that I've been constricted to, you know, to exist, and then some traumas happen, and you go at something. There's a little bright light that goes, I got to do something. I'll do anything, and it's for you. It's Reiki, and then all of a sudden, I don't even know what Reiki is.
Yeah,
but that's it.
Yeah,
those are the things that if I could just tell anybody to, like, follow your hunch. Jesus, follow your hunch. You know, a lot of times it's like people want to work harder and work harder. And trust me, you and I, we were
We were
ground.
workaholics. I mean,
Oh my
I was a
God, to do
workaholic.
that.
I never
Talk
took
about
vacation. It was crazy.
performance, you know,
Yeah.
Jesus. So it's, I'm just thrilled for it. And I know, like, in my life, I'm meant to help others. And so I need to plug back into source,
Yeah.
you know, and,
What
and,
lights you up? And that's
and
what we say.
recharge
Like,
and recharge.
go back into our hearts and find what lights you up first, what makes you feel good. Connect back with the body, because most people don't even know that they're disconnected from their body, and they're just so, like, the nervous system is just on hyperdrive, right, from all the stimuli of, over caffeinated, the drinks, to stay awake, from
Poison.
the
Yeah.
internet, from always being connected to the device. But we're so disconnected from our bodies, we don't even know what is communicating, why our bodies feel the pain. Why do we feel anxious during certain times? Why are our organs failing? So many people just are so accustomed to, let me just take a pill, or let me just go tell the doctor to remove that, right? It's crazy how disconnected we are. But in reality, those are just signals from our soul, spirit, our higher self, the divine, whatever you want to call that, is that there's an imbalance and is trying to get our attention. And what is it trying to say? So we just disconnect from, from these electronic boxes and the TV, and from the dramas, and, what the neighbor's doing, or what our families didn't say, and all that other stuff that keeps us in the little hamster wheel. And if we just go back into nature, go sit outside, is what we're saying, right? Not go on these long, crazy hikes. I'm not saying anything like that, but just go look at the tree, connect back to the body. And this is going to help you reestablish your own divine connection, to yourself, to higher self, to your spirit, to your guides, to the super conscious. And so, I want you to, I mean, I know that, I follow you, of course, on Instagram, and I just loved it because you just started this new practice for yourself.
Mhm.
And what I've noticed is that you're back into your body. So I want you to share, before, we're coming up to an hour, but I want you to kind of just tell our audience a little bit about you. You're an author. I didn't do a proper introduction, but so just give a little plug for yourself. But also, I want you to share your new practice that's helping you also connect back to your divine nature, because I love it. I absolutely love it.
Okay. Yeah. So I have a regular life. I'm a creative mind. I am a producer of content, and in the grown-up paid world, I make advertisements for large evil corporations. That and I'm very good at it. And I've my studio. You introduced me as the Fat Unicorn. That it's the name of my production company. But I've been a media guy for 35. I don't know. Yeah, probably 35, 37 years now. And so I've had to go through all the iterations and changes in the world. But I started out on my own company in 2008, and I left the corporate world. Um, that type of enslavement to, now trying not to work for assholes as much as I can, and as I kind of guide for retirement. Along this path, I've written a couple books. I've written some songs, some screenplays, and I've had some success with those elements that I'm thrilled to have been able to craft my thoughts into a conversation that I could share with other people. And I've written two really philosophical books about kind of an everyman mentality, questioning themselves, and I'm very proud of them. My kids read the book. You know, I've had strangers, just say some really, really nice things. And when you can turn something out into the world, that's really awesome. And then,
Inspiring, helping others, because it really is
yeah,
about, and it's like
yeah,
we can have, and this is what I'm trying to convey. We can have a normal existence. We still have to pay bills, we still have
yeah.
to maneuver through this world, but it doesn't mean that we cannot tap into our divine nature, our spiritual aspects. And, so you've had the privilege to do both. You're walking in both worlds. But I see, and this is also why I feel compelled to get your name out there, because you can continue doing your beautiful work on editing, creating content and commercials, but maybe perhaps we're just going to use your resources to find those other beautiful divine leaders out there, the souls that need your type of assistance, because it's all about now creating this new beautiful earth and platform where we're all sharing our innate gifts. I'm still very corporate in my day-to-days, and me, create my own creation, from my website to my editing to my mentorships, my entrepreneurial. I'm still the same person. And I still, implement all those beautiful trainings I did in the corporate world. But now it's just spiritual and it's who I am, right? And back then it's who I was. I just didn't know how to shine it. I didn't know how to articulate it.
Well, I hate to say it, but we do live in a world that we've got to have certain, and I'm proud to have the skill set that I have.
Mm-hmm.
But I continuously wonder how, the world wants you, to know that you can shoot everything, on your iPhone by yourself, which is true. But
Mm-hmm.
we also need help. We also, you need direction and, to curate a
Oh,
message to help reach people at a time when people have really drawn back. And we live in, inside these rooms. People don't get out of the house as much as, we used to. You mentioned like, the other things that I've done and stuff like that relate to exactly what we're talking about. I found myself again being reclusive,
mm-hmm.
right? Like I'm going to carve myself away and not be as outgoing as I used to be, or those things. And I'm like, maybe I'm just getting older or whatever. And
No.
but I know I have this skill set, and I found myself overweight. I found myself eating unhealthy. I found myself in all my awakenedness, on all my ascending, spiritual, experiences and accomplishments, if you will, that I'm fat and I'm unhappy and I'm poisoned by food and all these other things. And again, I had another loss. My dog died, and
Emma.
and my son was like, "Dad, just walk. Keep walking without her." And all of a sudden, I just started walking, and I walked and walked. And I couldn't tell you how, like, I keep on joking, like, who knew it was good for you? Of course, we always knew it was good for you. But I just started walking, and I just kept walking. And now I walk miles and miles and miles a day. And I do it every day. And I've done it for, with high intensity every day for a year. And I've lost weight and which was great. And then all of a sudden, I feel reconnected to nature and grounded. And I talk to birds and squirrels, and I pray, and I question things, and I create, and I'm allowed. It's a literal hour and a half meditation for me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so my son's like, you need to talk. You have a lot to share. You have great things to say. And my son's very kind. He goes, you inspire people, and he goes, you inspire me, and I'm moved by your success in this, and why don't you videotape it? And so I started sharing that, and I find value in it. I find it's a way to participate in a social exchange. No, even though the algorithm is part of the matrix that is kind of can cripple us. I'm just filled with the possibility that we're such a great species, we're good humans. We've been controlled and, forced
Make you
to.
believe that we're
Yes. And
insignificant and we're.
I want to do and say something, and I want to hug and grab the whole world. And it might only mean I can hug or grab two people.
Yeah.
And save them or help them or inspire them. And so I don't know why I do it. I'm compelled to do it.
You're sharing your love.
And that
You're
it is, and
emanating light, my darling.
that is the one thing is I know that there's only love in this world, in this universe. It's where we came from. It's where we're going.
Yeah. And it's not about algorithms. It's just us sharing our light.
Nothing.
Our message, whether it's goofy or no ego mask or nothing. It's our love. It's our hearts.
It's a trip. And I'm honored. And so I thank you for the gift of love that you've, put into the world and into my ears and into my heart. And I don't know the outcome. I don't need to know the outcome. All I know is that what I put in matters, and that I'm available to receive something that I had no idea I needed. And you're a part of that, a giant part of that. And that's what I hope is just like, Audrey, I have no idea what you do. And you do that awesome. I just,
I don't know what I do either. Apparently I don't work.
But you've made me, you've really shaped, a part of me that couldn't have been done without you. And you don't have a brochure that says, hey, I'm going to shape that. You're a craftsman, and you're just a wonderful human and, divine spirit.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. And I've had such a, wonderful time just having a conversation. Of course, we're going to continue our conversations.
Anytime.
I'll have you back on and we'll share more inspirational stories, hopefully, or just, talk. But I am going to list, Philip's information, his Instagram, where you can see his beautiful divine messages that he shares when he's connected to Source and doing his walks on Instagram. So I'll put all your links on there. The Fat Unicorn for those spiritual people out there that need, professional assistance in creating content, marketing. Philip's your guy, the Fat Unicorn. So I'll have all his information and all his links listed on the feed as well. And, I'm just so grateful that, I'm also trying to push myself out of my own comfort zone and my own boundaries as well, and putting myself out there, removing the mask, removing the ego of who am I to be sharing and I can't do it or whatever, all those
resistance.
Yeah, the resistance that shows up. And one of the things that I wanted to share also is that, I'm just grateful to you because, sometimes in my own doubts and that, that I've reached out and, you've helped me kind of get you've given me inspiration to get out there, and you're always saying such beautiful things for me to have, a little bit more confidence in what I do. So I so appreciate that. And of course, I appreciate your editing for our Emanations of Light podcast, for the Temple of Magdalene, for the Healing Ascension Temple, for Animals podcast, and we'll be starting up some other projects. So thank you for your assistance, because without you, it wouldn't be out, and it'd be really awful. So thank you for your creative, mastery, doing your magic behind the scenes, and but most of all for your friendship and for your love.
Well, thank you. Love you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll see you soon, everybody, and welcome to the show.